Today, we have our pre and post testing video for our mid-season patch. Apologies for this one being a bit later than normal. We've been really focused on Guardian games this past week, the Prophecy Dungeon, trying to get all the loot that we could possibly get before it rotates back out. And on top of that, private matches are not updated to the new sandbox. So yes, things have been a bit harder in terms of testing. Today's video though is going to be mainly containing our exotic weapon changes. We're also going to be talking about PvE changes, as well as a few PvP changes that we're still able to do. This is an incredibly detailed video, so timestamps will be down below. With that being said, let's begin with our exotics, starting with Vigilance Wing. This pulse rifle, which is a 5-round burst pulse rifle, now has deterministic recoil. This is kind of a hard one to really quantify, right? Deterministic recoil though is in the name. The recoil is deterministic, making it easier to manage. And this is something that Bungie is including on our exotics for the first time. Vigilance Wing being one of those exotics. Now we played with this immediately after this change, and let me just say, the recoil difference, although visually may not be that noticeable here, is noticeable when you fire the weapon. And I probably wouldn't have picked up on it had I not actually just used the weapon right before this update. And really, it's the 5th shot. That 5th shot doesn't seem to have as much of a kick. And somebody brought up a good point while we were playing with Vigilance Wing, was that Vigilance Wing is like an auto rifle with hiccups. And I would agree with that pre-deterministic recoil. In these pictures though, you could see some of the consolidation here, guys. It is better. And if you're a controller player, I urge you to try Vigilance Wing. I was getting so many 2 bursts with this pulse rifle. It was insane. So guys, give it a go. Next, we have Vex Mythoclast. Bungie increased the ADS damage fall-off scalar from 1.5 times to 1.7 times. Now, the pre-damage fall-off began at 33 meters. Post-damage fall-off, 38 meters. Now listen, of course I want Vex Mythoclast to be a 390 round per minute fusion rifle, auto rifle hybrid. It sucks that it's still at 360, but this is a big bump in its range. We're talking the upper levels of pulse rifle territory. This is a phenomenal buff though. 5 extra meters for Vex Mythoclast definitely warrants us to break it back out again, and we will be doing another review on Vex Mythoclast very soon. Next we have Wish Ender. True Sight now deactivates if you leave ADS or hold it for longer than 3 seconds. To reactivate, you must fully redraw the bow. Now obviously you could hold True Sight and get wall hacks until you needed to shoot. And if you scope out, then back in, wall hacks would return. And with Oathkeeper, you can actually hold that indefinitely. However, Pose, it does in fact deactivate after 3 seconds. And you then need to completely redraw Wish Ender. You can no longer scope out and then back in and have the wall hacks return. It needs to be completely redrawn if you scope out. And even with Oathkeeper, it'll deactivate when leaving ADS or after 3 seconds. Now, I'm not gonna say Wish Ender won't be seen inside of Crucible still. I think it will be. It's still a hard-hitting bow, but this has definitely diminished its ease of use. The good thing is that this is probably gonna be the only nerf Wish Ender gets, which means for my PvE players, you guys are probably safe. Now moving on, we have Edge of Action. Now, no, probably nobody is using this thing, but for my few Titans that are, Bungie increased its damage resistance in PvE against all combatants except bosses to 85% and increases damage resistance against bosses to 15%. Now in a Master Law sector, a couple red bars, as well as a few champions, could destroy it in roughly 12 seconds. And in most cases, it would be destroyed before it even went down on its own. Post, in a Master Law sector, it lasts fairly long. Usually, it would just have to go away on its own before enemies can destroy it. So overall, the survivability is better here. And yeah, we could do some builds with this, guys. Keep in mind, we did an entire glaive breakdown, and one thing Edge of Action does have going for it is that it synergizes with things like Helm of Saint 14, and it gives you a 5% buff when you dip in and out of it. Now this takes us to our next exotic, Manticore. Big changes for this SMG. Players must now be airborne for 0.5 seconds and deal damage with the weapon to activate the perk. This prevents accidental activation while running downstairs or doing small jumps. Bungie also gave it a special reload to quickly disengage anti-gravity thrusters, and swapping weapons will continue to disengage as well. Now, while anti-grav thrusters are engaged, combatants will be less accurate when targeting the player, similar to our Sparrow always on time. And with the Catalyst, final blows and sustained damage with Manticore while airborne grants a void overshield and returns ammo to the magazine. Now in our pre-testing, oftentimes, and you'll notice it here, you'll get stuck in the air when you really don't mean to, which is a bit awkward considering you may just be doing a small jump or even walking down certain elevations. This also made it difficult to disengage at times. Now it does 40% extra damage while airborne against red bars and Carl. And the Catalyst would give us resist ×4, which is 50% damage resist inside of PvE. And you can actually refresh this buff by just dealing damage while in the air. But if you lose it, you'll need to get another kill to get that damage resist back up. Now the Catalyst also partially refills the magazine, which is +3 ammo for each kill, and roughly every every 3 to 5 shots when dealing sustained damage. Now posts. Confirmed here, guys. Yes, you need to be airborne for 0.5 seconds and deal damage to activate the anti-grav thrusters. And in our testing, we really didn't run into any issues with accidentally triggering that perk. From elevation changes to previously getting accidentally stuck on stairs, none of that was really happening here. It could still happen, but not nearly as often. Now it also has a new special reload to disengage, which by the way, Teraba also received the same special reload when you activate Ravenous Beast. Now while anti-grav thrusters are active, you can see here, guys, enemies, yes, are less accurate. Legionaries won't shoot you very often, and if they do, they're pretty easy to avoid. And sometimes they'll just run straight up to you with their melee, but can't do anything. They just look at you. Carl now will shoot at you, but if you move just a little, he'll just continue firing in the same direction and take a few seconds to readjust his aim at you. We are definitely going to be doing a full review on this. But guys, normally, I would never recommend any build that sticks you in the air, especially in Grandmaster content. But this is actually something you could use. Now to top things off, the airborne damage bonus seemed to have received an increase in damage. Pre-patch, we were getting a 40% increase in our damage while airborne. But in our post-testing, for some reason, we're dealing 100% more damage while airborne. So from 946 damage to the body to 1,892 while airborne and 1,567 per crit to 3,134 per crit while airborne against Carl. There's no other buffs here, guys. I actually didn't even want to say anything, but yeah, we've got 100% more damage. Now the exotic catalyst still refills the magazine on kills and sustained damage, but will now grant you a void overshield as well. It roughly takes about 3 kills to get a full overshield, guys, but this is beautiful. Not only are we getting 100% more damage, but the enemies are literally confused around us while we're airborne. On top of an overshield, yes, we'll be talking about this in more detail very soon. Next we have Diris. Bungie increased impact damage against PvE enemies by 50%. Now the detonation damage is unaffected, so the total damage increase works out to be around 20%, varying by target type. They also increased the maximum rate of fire by 17%, and it takes us to our pre-damage numbers. Previously it dealt 9,811 impact damage and 16,915 explosion damage, for a total of 26,726 damage versus Carl. Now our mods damage does 29,884 damage versus Carl as well. Now at base, with no enrage, it takes about 65 frames or 1.083 seconds to shoot, and max range takes about 45 frames or about 0.75 seconds to shoot. Now continuing our pre-values, without the catalyst, it takes around 5 shots to hit max enrage. With the catalyst, it takes about 2 to 3 shots to hit that max enrage. Now posts, we're now dealing 15,104 impact damage and 17,760 explosion damage for a total of 32,864. Now impact damage was roughly 54%, but overall, this is a 20% increase in damage, which is pretty close to what Bungie said, but an extra 2%, which we'll take. Now they did say this will vary target to target, so that's probably why there's some variation there. Unfortunately though, there was no increase to our moth damage. I know, Bungie did say it would, but I just wanted to make sure that this didn't somehow transfer to the damage of our moths. Now base, no enrage. It still takes about 65 frames or that 1.083 seconds to shoot. Max enrage takes 39 frames now or 0.65 seconds, which does kind of get it close to that 17% buff, but not quite. The catalyst still takes around 2 shots to hit max enrage. Should you be using this, say over like a special grenade launcher? Well, it sucks that you're burning your exotic slots. Personally, I really like this exotic, especially when you pair it with our hunter exotics, moth keepers wraps. No, this doesn't like just change the game for this exotic, but it does make it more usable and tax on a little more damage. So for those of you that do take advantage of that exotic synergy, you're gonna appreciate this buff for sure. Moving on, we have Crimson. Bungie reduced the flinch dealt to players and its projectile impact by 17.5%. Now this one's a difficult one to really nail down. Let me just say though that this is testing in the old sandbox. Even though we're in the live game, for some reason private matches have not been updated to the new damage values. And the only reason why I bring that up is because I can't really tell the difference in the flinch. Crimson still looks like it does a pretty hefty amount of flinch. Now again, visually looking at that, it looks to be the same. When I did play Guardians though in the new sandbox that were rocking Crimson, I did feel like I could manage my shots against them. There are just times when you go up against a good Crimson user, when they start laying on the trigger, sometimes it's just like, dude, I give up. The flinch is just too much. I need to either just vacate this gunfight or die. I don't know if the player I was going up against just wasn't that great, but I didn't necessarily feel that level of overwhelm. This is definitely a question I need to ask you guys. Those of you that play with Crimson on a regular basis, do you notice your targets able to counter you more often in 1v1s? And if you've gone up against Crimson, have you noticed less flinch? Now this takes us to rocket launchers. Lots of changes on this one, guys. We're gonna work our way down the list on this though. Starting with precisions, Bungie increased reserve ammunition by 2 and reduced the damage penalty from minus 10% to now minus 5%. Now high impacts, they increased reserve ammunition by 2 and now deals more area of effect damage, but less impact, for roughly the same total damage. Now it's stated that the above 2 changes also affect Deathbringer, Gjallarhorn, and Truth. Now our pre-footage for Palmyra, which is a precision rocket launcher, would hold 7 rockets at base. They would max out at 10 with reserve mods, and it would deal 19,048 damage plus 60,631 damage for a total of 79,679 damage. Now post, it holds 9 rockets at base, maxing out at 12 with reserve mods, and it deals 20,109 damage plus 64,052 damage for a total of 84,161, roughly a 5.6% increase. Now for our high impacts, we tested this with Semi-Attition. Pre would hold 7 rockets at base and would max out at 9. It dealt 67,424 damage plus 21,166 for a total of 88,590 damage. Post, this high impact rocket launcher is now holding 9 rockets at base, maxing out at 11 with reserve mods. Its damage increase? Not by much, dealing 78,661 damage plus 9,960 damage for a total of 88,621. Now this is only a 0.03% increase in damage, but notice the difference here, the shift in its damage. Less impact, but more area of effect. Now this takes us to Gjallarhorn. Pre-testing, it would hold 7 rockets at base and max out at 10 with reserve mods. It would do 46,922 damage plus 13,391 plus 933 times 8, 1,999 times 8 for a total of 83,769 damage. Post, it can now hold 9 rockets at base, maxing out at 12 with reserve mods. It now deals 54,742 damage plus 6,302 plus 933 times 8 and 1,999 times 8 for a total of 84,500. Now this is roughly a 0.87% increase in damage, so not a whole lot more, but it did get a slight bump. The big thing is of course the fact that it holds 2 extra rockets at base, which is incredible. This brings us to Deathbringer. Deathbringer holds 7 rockets at base and would max out at 9 with reserve mods. It would deal 24,888 times 7 for a total of 174,216 damage. Post, it holds 9 rockets at base, maxing out at 11, which by the way, 2 to 3 reserve mods doesn't make a difference. It's 11 at 2 and 11 at 3, but it still does the same amount of damage. But guys, I am completely okay with this. More ammo, dude, in a battleground nightfall, especially with ammo crates, or if you've got somebody on your team providing you ammo, whether it's Cenotaph or Aeon Gauntlets, this is amazing. I'll take it all day long, man. Next, we have Truth. It would hold 7 rockets at base and cap out at 9 with reserves, dealing 62,563 damage plus 17,855 for a total of 80,418. Now post, this rocket now holds 9 at base, maxing out 11 with reserve mods, and deals 72,990 damage plus 8,403 for a total of 81,393 damage. Now this received the high impact change, but since Truth shouldn't hit impact damage at all, but occasionally does, at least here with Greg, this was effectively a 16% increase in damage. Now this brings us to our heavy grenade launchers. Bungie increased reserve ammunition by 6 rounds at 0 inventory stats and by 10 rounds at 100 inventory stats. Now they also reduced spike grenades impact damage buff from 50% to now 12.5%. And with the below changes, this reduces the total spike grenades damage buff from about 8% to 3%, making them less mandatory. They also increased direct hit impact damage by 10% and increased detonation damage by 5%. This is offset by a 5% reduction to detonation damage in PvP. Now just to give you some values here, Wendigo previously was holding 17 shots. Pose now holds 24. Now heavy spike damage was dealing 23,758 damage plus 9,170 for a total of 32,928. This was pre. Pose is doing 24,938 damage plus 7,559 for a total of 32,497. Now look at heavy with no spike. Pre was doing 23,215 plus 6,653 for a total of 29,868 damage. Post though, we're doing 24,378 plus 7,308 for a total of 31,686. The point here, guys, is that you don't need spike grenades. And matter of fact, this is really going to shift things a bunch on what the preferred magazine option actually is. So much so that we're going to be doing damage testing here very soon. soon, which will include us going through magazine options that I think many of us never thought to include until now. Now, we didn't actually sit down and record reserve ammo for all of our exotics. I wish we did, but just to give you one exotic that we do have values on, Anarchy. Anarchy previously was holding 19 shots at base. Now at base, it holds 23. But not only did Anarchy get an ammunition bump, it got a slight bump in its damage. 2 shots from Anarchy previously was doing 219,769 damage here. Post, 224,120 damage. Now we're assuming that that impact damage increase actually transfers over here to Anarchy. It's a small bump in damage, guys. The main takeaway is more ammo, which is what Anarchy definitely needs. No lie, guys, it may be time to break out Anarchy again. Just saying. Next, we have our special grenade launchers. Most notably, specials with spike. Pre was 18,288 plus 6,848 for a total of 25,136. Pose is 18,125 plus 5,683 for a total of 23,808. Roughly a 20% spike grenade impact nerf here. Now, this doesn't really get offset for special GLs with spike getting nerfed and doesn't get the same direct hit impact damage buff. Hopefully, this isn't intentional. Now, this takes us to our Waveframe heavy grenade launchers. We kind of already covered this a lot in our Hullabaloo review. And look, everybody said I was saying it wrong. It's not Hullabaloo, it's Hullabaloo. Fellas, I have never been more confident in my life that that is Hullabaloo. Now, Bungie increased the heavy wave grenade launcher damage by 20%. And they also increased the heavy wave grenade launcher wave width by 40%, which is pretty massive. Now, the heavy wave damage here pre was doing 44,740 damage. Post is doing 53,688. Now, we were questioning, will this have any effect on Salvation's grip? It's technically a stasis waveframe. With pre values, it was doing 31,785 damage plus 8,267 for a total of 43,704 shatter damage. Post is dealing 33,377 damage plus 9,101 for a total of 45,894 shatter damage. Guys, this received a 5% explosion increase and a 10% impact damage increase. Now, I know some of you are probably like, Cross, why would I ever use Salvation's grip? Who cares? Look, I know I'm probably the only one crazy enough to bring this inside of a Grandmaster Nightfall, but it works. And the few times I used it, I had a great time playing with it. So guys, you may want to consider messing around with Salvation's grip. I'm just saying. Next, we have our caster swords. Bungie reduced heavy attack energy cost from 5 to 4, and they increased heavy attack damage by 16%. Pre-damage values, we have 6,584 damage times 9 for a total of 59,256. And this, of course, would cost 5 ammo per heavy attack. Posts, we're doing 7,682 times 9 for a total of 69,138 damage, and now costs 4 ammo. Now, does this mean caster swords are now meta? Well, I think you should definitely consider Dragon Colt Sickle. It's a caster frame, it's strand. We're going to be looking at it in more depth. We actually haven't done a review on it, but it's perfect for this right here, as I do want to break it down in more detail in another video. Next, we have our heavy burst hand cannon. Bungie fixed an issue where the heavy burst hand cannons had 25% less aim assist than other hand cannons when hip firing or airborne on mouse and keyboard. Now, this is a bit subjective, but I think all of us could agree that Warden's Law felt bad. On mouse and keyboard, it felt pretty inaccurate while airborne, and when hip firing, even with the reticle over the target, it was still landing body shots. Now, post, it's a little bit more accurate while airborne, but again, not that great. As for my hip fire shots, even with the reticle over the head, I still find it landing bodies. Now, I must confess, guys, I just don't use Warden's Law often inside of PvP. We did our initial review of it, and for PvP, I just don't like it. For PvE, I love it. For Lucky Pants, it's fantastic. But personally, I don't really feel like this moves the needle all that much for Warden's Law, at least for mouse and keyboard users. Keep in mind, though, it is getting another buff in the final shape. Next, we have bows. Bungie reduced the auto-aim fall-off distance start and end by 15%. They also reduced auto-aim cone size by 5% at 100 accuracy, but remains unchanged at 0. Now, aim assist is pretty generous on bows, especially mid to long range. As you can see here, guys, you could be pretty far off the head and still have aim assist land the shot for you. Pose, I'm gonna say it's not as generous anymore. Granted, precision bows still have pretty generous aim assist at range, but on lightweight bows, you have to have that reticle on the target for it to actually land. Personally, I've seen less bows. I don't know what it is. I've just seen less of them. And the few times I have gone up against a bow, I feel like I've been able to counter them pretty good. And again, bows are normally just that type of weapon that's really aggravating. Someone would peek out, they would chunk a good portion of your health off. It was aggravating. But bows really don't feel that aggravating to go up against anymore. Next, we have auto rifles. Nothing really crazy here, guys. Breakneck had target lock finally added, as Bungie stated that it was a missing 12th perk, in Breakneck's second trait column. Now listen, as much as I love Breakneck, all I'm gonna say is that Prosecutor is now in the game. It too can roll target lock, and it is disgusting. Please get it and check out our review. Next, we have lightweight scout rifles. Bungie increased the base damage by 5%. They said that they were making a change that reduces the proportions of crits required for optimal time to kill from 4 crits to now 3 crits in one body. Now, funny enough, I actually was using modded multi-tool in trials this past weekend, and it did pretty good. But pre-update, it could get the kill in 4 crits at tier 10 resilience, all the way to tier 6, and at tier 5 resilience, it could get the kill at 3 crits in one body. Now, then it could still get the kill with explosive payload. Post, all the way up to tier 10, guys, you can get the kill in 3 crits, 1 body, in 0.9 seconds. So still the same time to kill value, but 3 crits in 1 body all the way to the top. Now, this is one of the few PvP things that we can actually test, considering that the private lobbies that we have are in the old sandbox. But everything should still transfer and beat 3 crits in 1 body, all resilience levels. Now, explosive payload. I bring that up because this is also a notice for everyone that has an explosive payload weapon, whatever that may be, whether it's a hand cannon like Rose with explosive payload or any other weapon that has things like time payload. Because the split in damage, you are not getting the full damage with that weapon. For instance, a Rose with explosive payload is not able to achieve the 3-tap in the current sandbox. This is a bug. It shouldn't be there. Hopefully Bungie addresses it. Now moving on, we have sniper rifles. Bungie reduced the auto aim by 10%. Personally, guys, it's kind of hard for me to notice. Maybe it's a little less auto aim over range. This is definitely a small change. And we were using Beloved the other day with both controller and mouse and keyboard, and we had no problems landing shots. So if you think sniper rifles are dead, you're good, man. Keep sniping. Now this takes us to our perks and origin traits. We're gonna start with Heal Clip. Heal Clip now grants cure ×2 to players while still granting cure ×1 to nearby allies. Now previously it would only grant cure ×1 to yourself and your allies, which equates to 60 HP. Now it grants cure ×2 to yourself. Guys, that is 110 health. It also grants cure ×1 to your allies. Fellas, I need you to look through your vault, find those weapons with Heal Clip and give them a go. This is a very good trait. Next, we have Trench Barrel. It can now be activated by dealing damage with ranged melee attacks. Now previously it did not work on any ranged melee attacks. Post though, it works on all of them. Trench Barrel grants 50% increased damage, 30 reload speed, and 30 handling for 5 seconds or until you fire 3 shots. This is especially great for Legend of Acreus. And if you're on Solar, you can literally use a ranged melee, proc Radiant, and now you got Trench Barrel, Radiant, and an Acreus fully amped. It's amazing. Next, we have Barrel Constrictor. It no longer activates upon firing a shot and lasts for 7.5 seconds and 8.5 seconds for Enhance. Now, it would decrease pellet spread by about 25%. This is provided to us by Mercules and goes away after 7.5 seconds or 8.5 seconds with Enhance as soon as you fire a shot. Post, it still decreases pellet spread by 25% and does go away by 7.5 seconds or 8.5 seconds when Enhanced, but you can fire as many shots as you want during that time frame. Now, this is difficult for us to test considering that we don't have the current sandbox, but I do want to bring up that considering the ammo economy inside of Crucible, if you were to say pile up a bunch of shots and just accumulate a bunch of ammo, you could make a play with Barrel Constrictor. Now, would I use Barrel Constrictor over, say, opening shots? Probably not. I like traits that can help me on the front end. No kill activation required, just something to just benefit me right then and there. Next, we have Loose Change. Applying an elemental debuff now increases aim assist and ADS movement speed in addition to reload speed. Applying an elemental debuff only increased reload speed. Now, it's actually a chunk, plus 50 reload. But post, applying elemental debuff increases reload speed, but also grants plus 20 aim assist and 20% reduced ADS movement speed penalty. Guys, it felt pretty good, at least in our testing. Fairly easy to proc, especially for like my Strand Hunters or Strand Warlocks. And there's a lot of other options out there. Again, look at your weapons, guys. You may actually have one that can roll with Loose Change. We tried it out with Adorative and Incandescent, and it's nice because those two can proc each other. Incandescent can literally self-proc on kill and grant yourself Loose Change, giving you that plus 20 aim assist and all these other benefits. Next, we have Dual Loader. Bungie removed the reload speed penalty. Now, there was a reload speed penalty, which is why absolutely nobody used Dual Loader. It would take 68 frames per reload, which is roughly a 40% penalty here. Post, there is no reload speed penalty. Matter of fact, it takes us 48 frames here to get a reload, and with Frenzy, we're able to bring that to 40 frames. And there's a few shotguns out there you can make work with Dual Loader. For instance, Ragnarhild, you can go Enhanced Dual Loader and get crazy with a mag boosting perk. Something to consider, guys. Next, we have Tex Balanced Stock. Now grants plus 20 range and plus 1.5 degrees hip fire precision cone angle in addition to its other effects. Now it It grants increased handling, reload speed, and 0.9 times reload duration multiplier, and increases ADS movement speed penalty by 10% after landing hipfire shots. Now posts. You get all the previous benefits in addition to the range, and what this really does is that it brought something like long arm with 72 range with a damage fall off at 84 meters, and when you proc its origin trait, it'll start to hit damage fall off at 90 meters. Now guys, I've tried this origin trait on the new scout rifle with the Prophet. Personally, I still don't recommend running around hip firing with this weapon. This is still not going to match what you can do with DMT. The hip fire on DMT is just substantially better. Now I do want to mention that Tex Balanced Stock and its buff did not apply to DMT. Literally reached out to Mercules on this, guys, and no, there is no benefit whatsoever that transferred to Dead Man's Tale. Now, is Dead Man's Tale performing better in this new sandbox? Yes. Securing that 3-tap, going for the 2 crit 1 body, it has more forgiveness than that of like a 120 round per minute hand cannon. It has those things, which is why you've been seeing some people use Dead Man's Tale. But the people running around saying that Dead Man's Tale got a buff due to Tex Balanced Stock getting a buff, that didn't happen, as it's not even present on Dead Man's Tale to begin with. Moving on, we have Envious Assassin. Each activation is now capped at 100% of the magazine instead of 150%, and a maximum overflow is now 3 times the mag instead of 4 times. Now it could overflow Cataphract to 17 shots, which was its entire reserves in one magazine. Now one activation of Envious would overflow to 15, and then one more activation would get it to 17. Posts. It can now overflow Cataphract to 18 shots. Now I know that sounds confusing, but guys, that's because of the grenade launcher changes in its ammo reserves. You get one more due to that buff. Now one Envious activation though overflows it to 12, and the 2 Envious activations gives you 18, and this is the max. It can't go beyond this. Now if Envious would not have been nerfed, the reserve buff would have been able to overflow to 24 shots. Now I know what you're asking, Cross, I don't give a damn about Cataphract. Tell me, where does Code Comfort sit now? On Code Comfort, Toity here was able to overflow 3 shots before, which he can still do, but it takes multiple activations to do so instead of just 1. Overall, guys, I think Envious is still a good perk. Don't go be scrapping everything that you got that has Envious on it. It's still solid. You just gotta hit a few more activations. Next, we have Bait and Switch. Bungie reduced the damage bonus from 35% to 30%. Now with Apex Predator, we were dealing 100,124 damage plus 31,432 for a total of 131,556 damage. Posts, we're dealing 96,416 damage plus 30,268 for a total of 126,684. So definitely a nerf here, guys, but keep in mind, one of the biggest benefits about Bait and Switch is that it still gets buffed by Wolfpack rounds, something Explosive Flight has trouble doing. Next, we have 1-2 Punch. Now correctly deactivates after dealing damage with a powered melee attack. Now previously, you could land 2 melee attacks, most notably on our Hunters and our Berserker Titans. But now though, guys, it deactivates after 1 melee hit, meaning only 1 melee attack can be buffed per activation, charged or uncharged. Is this a killer to our melee base builds? You damn right it is. That hurts, fellas. Next, we have Hatchling. Activation requirements are no longer locked to the archetype in terms of precision or non-precision kills. Now on Witchkeeper, it would only activate on precision kills. Pose, it can activate on precision kills, that being just 1 or 3 non-precision kills, which means it's working as intended. Now next on the list, we have Hawkeye Breach Armaments, Deconstruct, and Sundering. Bungie states that it now works with Void Souls, Strand Clones, Cabal Projecting Shields, and Bricks. Now in our pre-testing, with our Hawkeye Aggressive here, it will do 16 damage to a Void Soul and take 3 bursts to destroy. A Strand Clone, it will do 16 damage to the body, 27 damage to the head, and take 2 bursts, all crits, to destroy. For Bricks, it would do 983 damage per shot, and when it's crit exposed, 1,666. Takes way too long to destroy. Cabal Projecting Shield, 677 damage per shot, and takes 3 bursts to destroy. Now posts, again with that same Hawkeye Aggressive. Void Soul, it does 21 damage per shot, and now takes 2 bursts to destroy. Strand Clones, it does 21 damage to the body and 35 damage to the head, taking 1 burst of crits and 1 burst of body shots to destroy. Bricks, we're dealing 1,130 damage per shot, and with its crit exposed, 1,916. Still, takes way too long to destroy. And Cabal Projection Shields, dealing 880 damage per shot, shot and takes 2 bursts to destroy. Moving on to Deconstruct. Bungie updated the perk description to correctly state that it pulls ammo from thin air, not from reserves. They also upgraded Deconstruct to work on fusion rifles and any weapons that deal splash damage. Now, they corrected an issue preventing the perk from activating on enemy constructs in the Crucible, and they fixed an issue where Deconstruct would not work as expected when dealing explosive damage. They also fixed an issue where Deconstruct's ammo refund was not working correctly on fusion rifles. Now, previously, it did not work on a Titan shield in PvP. Post though, it works. On a 600 round per minute auto rifle, it goes from 16 to 22. I do want to mention that the other stuff noted was not in the original notes. Now, this takes us to our final thing on the list. Sundering can now trigger on shield break, in addition to final blows on vehicles and constructs, and they added a small reload speed scaler and reduced charge rate benefits to account for higher uptime. Again, this is the origin trait on the dungeon weapons. Now, Sundering buff is no longer active while weapons are stowed. Previously, it would not activate when breaking shields, therefore not netting you any of those benefits. Now, posts now activates when breaking a shield. For instance, Vengeful Whisper with 576 draw time and a 40 reload speed takes 85 frames from the moment we shot to the moment we reach that full draw. With Sundering active, it takes 70 frames with the exact same roll. This is very nice, guys, as this is roughly allowing us to shoot 11% faster. And our caster frame sword that we mentioned earlier, Dragon Colt Sickle, seems to get its energy back 25% faster. So a solid change here to Sundering. So guys, that is all of our breakdown for today. We definitely have some things we still need to touch on. I'm hoping that Bungie is going to make the change here soon to allow our private lobbies to have the current sandbox. Until then, we will be doing live testing over on our Twitch. Come by, guys. Come join us. We bet eggplants, which is our in-chat currency. You could choose which weapon you think is going to be the best or the worst. Whichever way, guys. It's always a fun time. So come join us. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.